Knightly Musers, followers of the pod, faithful few and hopeful many, this is Anchor by Spotify. If you haven't heard about it, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's the very platform that allows me to give you what I give you on the Nightly. So let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And it gives you the ability to distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally FREE free. So here's where you come in. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That is ANCHOR.fm to get started. Thank you very much. Peace. Knightly Muse, welcome. Knightly Musers, rather. Welcome to the Knightly Muse podcast. I'm your host, Tinayeshe. And here we go. I am officially 24 years old as of yesterday. And figured I'd talk about it. Birthdays are weird. I don't feel any different outside of the fact that I had to go to the chiropractor earlier this week, so I ushered in another year around the sun, or at least completing my lap around the sun for the 24th time with a trip to the chiropractic office in North Lake. Shout out doctor, don't remember her name, but it's tough. Found out that burpees are in fact the devil's work, and basically in working out, burpees are one of those things where the more fatigued you get, the worse your form becomes, as are most things athletically. But like burpees are really detrimental because when you get tired, they just kind of turn into up downs. And up downs, if you're not careful, can be dangerous. Especially when you're not like wearing pads and stuff, because you can apparently knock a rib out of place, which is exactly what I did. And apparently knocking a rib out of place, even because your ribs wrap around to your back, basically they can exhibit as like pulled muscles or strains, things of that nature. And so not going to be doing burpees for a while, at least not while I am this size, Mr. 300 plus defensive lineman. That's a fun little thing. Definitely made me feel old, but it was also just really funny to experience. Life is good. 24. There's just a lot of things to be excited about as it pertains to this next year of life, my 25th lap that I'm starting. It's one thing about birthdays I find interesting is I always forget, like, when I turn 24, that means that I've been alive for 24 years. I.e., when I turn 25, that means I will have finished my 25th lap, marking 25, and starting my 26th lap around the sun, because you start at 0. So anyway, all that being said, 24 is going to be interesting this next year. I'm looking forward to, obviously, the EP is in process. Got a lot of goals, things that I'm working towards that are just fun to, I don't know, I feel like this past year has just been a lot of learning, a lot of trying to do what I can to become a better person, as that is an important thing to strive for, I guess. I don't know. I think it can become easy to... Complacency is weird. Think about my friend and co-host Teve. He's like, there is no stagnation. I think stagnation is a phrase. There is no like being stagnant. You're either progressing or you're regressing. And there are times where I feel like that is true. And there are times where I feel like I've kind of just plateaued in life. Not like I've peaked, but just life feels like it's not really, I don't know what I'm saying right now. I turned 24. I'm not trying to be deep for deep's sake, but there are things that I'm looking forward to, and I feel like the past couple of years I have been doing a better job at like just putting myself in position to be better in the future. Because a lot of like this EP project is gonna take longer than I thought, which is okay, but that's just the reality. Health stuff, that's a long process to get to where I actually want to get to, and there are a lot of components that make that, you know, it's a good thing to strive for, but you have to like have a really good mindset about it in order to do it in a healthy way. And sometimes it's hard to stay in the present and keep that healthy perspective. So I don't know, I guess as I go into this next year of my life, I just want to continue staying in the present, continue learning from the experiences that I've had. And as it pertains to prayer, I want to stay at the feet of Jesus. There have been some things in my life that have forced me to be very prayerful, and it makes life a little, I don't know, faith and prayer and all of that is an interesting thing. Sometimes something can be complicated or difficult that kind of forces you to be at God's feet, to where you're like, God, I gotta be here so that I don't lose my mind. And there's good in that. That's a good, healthy, I think, humbling that takes place. Is I understand very clearly that without God I can't make it through. So each night I'm praying and I'm truly offering it up to the throne. And there are other times where you can be going through that same thing and it's like, God, like my faith feels shaky, and it can be because it's still hard. You know what I mean? Like there's something humbling about being in situations where all you can do is pray. And there's something equally as frustrating about being in a situation where all you can do is pray because you're out of control. I think about Tim Ross's podcast that I always plug, The Basement. And it's so interesting when he talks about his triggers and how, you know, through counseling, shout out counseling and therapy, he was able to kind of like figure out what his core traumas were. And it helps you. I always use this analogy of it helps you identify what the monster is under the bed. And once you identify it, you can face it and then realize that it's not as scary as you once thought it would be, or as you once thought it was, as you once thought it to be. And you know, it's like once a kid realizes that alarming noise that happens at random points in the day and there's somewhat of a schedule to it, but it always catches you by surprise. Oh, that alarming noise that scares you is the HVAC unit, and your door closes without anybody touching it, because that's what HVAC units do. It's something about the gust of wind that allows for that, just enough push for the door to automatically close. And it can freak you out. It still freaks me out every now and then when I'm not ready for it. But as a kid, your imagination goes, oh, ghosts, oh, monster. And then you realize what the monster actually is. You turn the lights on and expose it, and then it loses its power. Doesn't mean that you're not going to be afraid. It doesn't mean that you won't slip up every now and then. But it means that you're aware of the monster that you're facing, and now it's not intimidating. It's just an obstacle that you have to be mindful of. And so, yeah, as somebody who I have, been pretty open, like, with my own struggles and my history, one of the things that I really appreciate about that podcast is it just convicts me to say, like, to be real, and to say what I said a few episodes ago, or maybe 10 episodes or 15, I don't remember, but that I'm doing everything I can to make pornography, masturbation, those struggles a part of my past and not my present. And a lot of that has been through prayer, a lot of that has been through counseling and introspection, but in those spaces, it can be really hard to have moments where you really feel like, I mentioned with accountability, it's really sweet to be able to experience something that gives you a glimpse of what freedom could be. And it's a whole nother game when you experience, like, actual freedom, like where you're living and you're walking and you can feel like, I'm praying God, like, there's this what is it, King's Kaleidoscope, King's K, they have this record that they're coming out with called A Baptized Imagination. And when you think about being baptized, you go under the water, you're submerged, you're sprinkled, whatever form of baptism you do, but you come in one way and you come out another. You go in one way and you come out another. And that idea of, like, I think I wrote a song, and I want to say there's this, it's a riff off of the Lord's Prayer. I've written 2 songs that do that, but this was the first one. And it was, give me your bread, oh Father, give me your bread each day. I think it was, baptize my mind, unravel my eyes, remind me this night that you're kneeling right beside me as I pray. Again, it's this reminder of God's presence when I feel alone. I wrote this song when I was in quarantine, and going through one of the hardest patches of my pornography struggle, because of that isolation, because of that loneliness, and because I was staring at my struggle and feeling like it was beating the crap out of me, like it was kicking my teeth in. And I felt like, man, like, God, where are you right now? And the prayer, like, remind me that you are actually there. Give me that nightly bread. Give me, wow, they are driving fast. Give me that nightly bread to make it through the night. Because I felt like every night I was crawling towards the finish line. And sometimes I was making it, and other times the cuts and bruises overtook me. And so I think about that, and to be in that place where freedom felt so far away, and to be where I am now, where it was like, man, like praying every day, and then including in that prayer, like continue to like to refashion my eyes, to baptize my mind, to fashion it the way that you want it to be, to where I don't like look at women differently, to where I don't have like a mind that objectifies, but a mind that can admire and keep it moving. Like all of those things that freedom feels, or at least you hope freedom would feel like, what the purity of one's mind used to feel like. All of that, you know, there was a desire, an earnestness in my prayer to see that happen again, because I'm like, man, like if the scripture says whom the Son sets free is free indeed, then I've got to believe that that's possible for me too. And so I had a moment like where I felt that, like where I truly felt like I was walking in freedom and that I was living in it. Like it was not a walking into it until it continues to be so. Like I really felt free. And the realities of that season was something that Tim Ross says, is that like he's not holier than other people. He just keeps himself on a short leash. And that was so relevant to me, because it's so easy in those moments where you're not feeling tempted, when you're not feeling the struggle, to go, all right, well, I'm good. And you get lax and you let your guard down and you can stumble. And that's what happened to me. And like, you know, you go down the right proper channels and confess to who you need to confess to, but then you remind yourself, hey, like I got a glimpse of what freedom was like. I don't want to go back to this. And when I think about 24, when I think about this next year, I think about that. I think about not wanting another Bible story, Lot and his wife, right? They're getting pulled out of Sodom and Gomorrah, this, you know, depraved city. And the angel says, don't look back, look ahead. The wife looks back and turns into a pillar of salt. Granted, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to me, but this idea of, you know, I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. That idea of like tasting communion with Jesus, and oh Lord, not me crying while driving. That idea of tasting freedom and like peace, like to be able to go to sleep and not even feel like, man, I don't even remember the last time I messed up. Not because it was that far in the past, but because I've just so thoroughly enjoyed like feeling like this isn't something that I'm chained to anymore. And so there's this part of me that's like, man, like what is wrong with me? What is the part in me that is broken, so broken that I can taste freedom, that I can taste deliverance, that I can actually experience it for the stretch that I did, and then still fall. And I know that it's in part, yeah, like I'm not perfect, and I know that, but it's also like, man, like when I sing Holy Spirit and it's like I've tasted and seen the sweetest of loves, when my heart becomes free and my chains are undone, like that, in your presence, like that idea, like I don't want those things to just be songs that I sing. And for the first time, it felt like those words weren't songs anymore. They weren't just songs. It was like my real life playing it out, like my eyes, my mind, my heart, everything felt so different. And I don't want to look back. I don't want to look back. When I think about 24, I'm like, man, 8-year-old Kennedy, not 12 years ago. 8 plus, 16 years ago? To not know, like, man, give or take 8 years old, man, I would do anything to not have that little kid find the stuff that he found. Because a darn near 16-year long journey of this struggle and of, like, the questions and the shame and all of that, like, I don't wish that on my worst enemy. And to experience for the first time, and the funny thing is, it's not the longest stretch that I've had of, like, abstaining, I guess, but, like, it was the first stretch I've had of true shame-free, like, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, onward and upward, just freedom. That inhale, exhale. I'm thinking of Jane the Virgin. Inhala, exhala. Like, there's this, like, it's a breath of fresh air. You go to sleep and you're like, man, I'm not even, like, I felt like a different human. And then the foundations, the things that I was praying for outside of that, things get rocky. And, like, another song I wrote, this old dog, wayward hands, and a child. I've got wayward hands that fight me for control. I've got wayward hands that fight me for control. Because if they can't escape to porn, these hands won't know which way to go. I've got these wayward hands that fight me for control. This idea of, like, you know, if my right hand causes me to sin, man, I'm just pulling out all these different scriptures, but this idea of, like, this old dog that has these these tricks, these mechanisms, these coping mechanisms, these self-soothing, self-medicating tactics to survive, to cling to. They don't want to go away, and it's like, I gotta kill it. I have this, like, man, but it wasn't even like I killed it. It was just all of a sudden I felt like, through all of the work that has, you know, God has led me through, it's like, man, like, I don't want to go back to this. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to. And a lot of, like, introspection and a lot of, like, self-evaluation and all of this stuff, and just digging and journaling and praying and crying and being frustrated. And it's like, man, finally I felt like, obviously the fruit of it has been long coming, like, ever evolving. It's been a process, but, like, to feel the other side of it for the first time, it's like, man, 24, I don't want to turn back. I want to just keep looking forward, and I hope that it's true. I hope that this is what happens. And like I said, I don't view it as perfection. I want it to be a feeling of I don't know. being able to catch a glimpse of real intimacy with the Father and real relationship, and just being like, man, I don't want to get in the way of that. And so, Knightly Musers, this episode has taken a lot of form. It's gone in a lot of, like, not rabbit trails, but I don't know, I feel like I got more emotional than I was planning on getting. I legit almost, yeah, that was weird. Luckily, I do this thing where I'll say something to kind of, like, distract myself so I can, like, you know, humor, to be like, hey, don't cry on the pod. One day I'll let loose, but not while I'm driving. I gotta have some focus on the task of getting myself home in one piece. But yeah, shout out Lo-Fly. I'm sorry, y'all, that I haven't been as on it in terms of getting these episodes out. But to be honest, like, for these last few episodes of the season, while yes, like, I want to, you know, it's nightly, I want to do my best to get these episodes out. I also want to speak from my heart and really have something to share. And this was a good start. So here's to another year. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me now. Happy birthday to me. Yeah, it was a good time. And shout out Lo-Fly. Shout out you guys for sticking with me like you have. This has been another episode of the Knightly Muse. Season 1 is coming to a close. But my love for this pod and the listeners is one thing that will never go. Until next time, Knightly Muse.